My brother snapped. "I've lived here long enough. You can't throw me out now." Then I saw the brand new lock he put on my own door, and I told him, "Keep playing tough guy because I just found the one paper that changes everything." When my brother moved into my house, I told myself it would only be for a few weeks. That was almost 2 years ago. At the time, I had just crawled out of my divorce. My dad had been dead for less than a year, and my brother was acting like his life had fallen apart all at once. He lost his job in packaging. His wife left him. His truck died on the side of I-71, and he did not have the money to fix it. He was 34 years old and looked like a guy standing in the middle of a highway with no idea which direction to run. I felt bad for him. I also felt guilty because I had a spare bedroom, a steady paycheck, and a house my dad had left to me after the probate was done. So I let him stay. At first, it was easy to explain away. He would crash on the couch a few nights. Then he brought in a duffel bag and a laundry basket. Then a guitar he never played. Then a box of paperwork that sat unopened by the hallway closet for 6 months. I told myself I was helping family. That is what I kept telling myself every time I stepped over his shoes in the entryway or found my own leftovers gone from the fridge. I worked from home 3 days a week doing IT support for a hospital network in Columbus, so I was around enough to see the slow takeover happen. The spare bedroom became his room. Then the garage became half his shop. Then the kitchen got remade around his habits. Then the whole house started feeling like a place I was visiting instead of a place I owned. The dumb part is that I noticed all of it. I just kept waiting for the right time to say something. I kept thinking there would be a natural moment where he got back on his feet and moved out on his own. I kept thinking I did not want to be the brother who kicked a man when he was down. So I swallowed my irritation. I bought extra groceries. I raised the thermostat when he said he was cold. I paid the electric bill by myself when he said he was too broke to help. I covered the water bill. I let him use my tools. I let him borrow my truck once and regretted it for 3 weeks. I did all of that because I thought there was a limit to how long someone could lean on you before they finally stood up on their own. I was wrong. The first sign that things had gone past normal was the mail. He started getting his bank statements sent to my address, then his credit card, then some paperwork from a legal clinic after his divorce. At first, I did not care. Then I started finding his envelopes mixed in with mine. Then he opened one of my tax letters by mistake and acted annoyed that I had left it in the kitchen. That was around the same time he started talking like the house was his base of operations. He would tell people on the phone he was at home. He would tell contractors to call back later because he was dealing with stuff at the house. He would answer the door in his slippers when I had work calls. He was not loud about it. He was worse than loud. He was casual. He acted like he belonged there so completely that it started making me question my own memory. I remember one Thanksgiving when my mother came over with a pie and immediately noticed how much of the living room had become his territory. My brother had old gym equipment in one corner, a folding table with tools in another, and a stack of beer cases by the back wall that he had promised to take to a friend who never came. My mother saw all of it and smiled the way mothers do when they are trying not to make a problem worse. She told me I was being kind. She told me he just needed time. She told me everybody falls apart differently. I said I understood. I did understand. I just did not understand how long temporary was allowed to last. By Christmas, he was still there. By New Year, he was still there. By spring, I had stopped believing he would leave on his own. But I still had not said it. What finally broke the silence was a Thursday in late February. We had gotten one of those ugly Ohio cold snaps where the roads look gray and wet even when they are iced over. I came home from the grocery store with a bag of coffee, a carton of eggs, and enough frozen food to keep me from cooking for 4 days. I was already tired because work had been a mess. One of our hospital systems had lost access to an old scheduling server, and I had spent most of the afternoon walking 3 different managers through the same restart sequence, while they all insisted the problem had to be bigger than it was. All I wanted was to put the groceries away, make dinner, and disappear into a dumb show on my laptop. Instead, I noticed my bedroom door was closed. That was strange because I never closed it all the way. I pushed it open and stopped dead. There was a brand new lock installed on the door handle, not a knob that had been replaced in a normal, practical way. An actual new keyed lock, fresh hardware, shiny screws, no dust around the plate yet. I stood there for a few seconds honestly thinking I had walked into the wrong room. My dresser was still there. My old college poster was still on the wall. My boxes of tax records and documents were still stacked in the corner, but the door to my own room had a lock on it now. I remember feeling hot all at once, like my face and neck were on fire. I walked straight into the kitchen and asked my brother why there was a lock on my bedroom door. He was at the table with his laptop open and a can of energy drink half empty beside him. He did not even look embarrassed. He acted irritated that I had interrupted him. He said he had needed privacy. He said I was always coming and going, and he did not feel like he had a space of his own. He said the room was not a big deal and that I should stop acting dramatic. I remember looking at him and realizing he had said all of that without once sounding like he knew he had crossed a line. I asked him why my room needed privacy from me. He said I had been treating him like a guest when he had been living there long enough to count as part of the house. That was the first time he said something that made me go very still. I asked him what that was supposed to mean. He told me I had to stop acting like I could throw him out whenever I felt like it. He said he had lived there long enough that I could not just decide he was gone now. I was so surprised I actually laughed once, not because it was funny, because I thought he had lost his mind. I asked him who told him that. He said nobody had to tell him. He said he knew how things worked. He said he had been paying with his time his work around the house, and the fact that he had nowhere else to go. I stared at him and tried to decide whether he was just being stupid or whether he had been building toward this for months. Then I saw the little brass key ring on the counter. There were 2 keys on it. One of them was obviously for the new lock on my bedroom door. The other was one I had never seen before. That was when the first real ugly thought hit me. I walked back to my room and checked the drawer where I kept my important paperwork. The drawer was still closed, but the folders inside had been shifted around. The fireproof box I kept under the bed was still there, but the latch was not fully shut. I pulled it out and opened it. My passport was still there. My birth certificate was still there. My insurance papers were still there, but the folder I used to keep house records in was gone. I turned around so fast I nearly hit my shin on the bed frame. My brother was still in the kitchen, pretending not to watch me. I asked him where my folder was. He said he had no idea what folder I was talking about. He said if I was worried about papers, I should keep them somewhere better. That was not how I remembered the next minute, because anger does weird things to time. I know I did not yell. I know I did not slam anything. I know I kept my voice low enough that if the neighbors had been outside, they would not have heard me. I told him I was going to find the folder, and I was going to find out why he thought he could put a lock on my door. He smiled in a way I had started to hate. Not a full grin, just enough of one to tell me he felt in control. He told me I was making a scene over nothing. He told me he had been living there long enough to be more than a guest. He told me I should stop talking to him like he was some stranger squatting in my house. That was the line that made my stomach drop, because that was exactly what he sounded like. A man who had talked himself into believing the story he wanted. I left the kitchen and spent the rest of the evening pretending I was okay. I heated up frozen lasagna. I answered one work email. I watched him go out to the garage and then come back in with a box of extension cords I had not seen in months. I did not sleep well that night. I kept hearing the click of that new lock in my head. I kept thinking about my dad, who had spent 40 years making sure every screw in that house had a purpose. I kept thinking about the day the probate lawyer handed me the final paperwork and told me the house was mine alone. I kept thinking about how my brother had stood in the parking lot after the funeral and acted so fragile that I had ignored the part of him I knew was not fragile at all. The next morning I started looking for the file folder in a way that would not tip him off. I did not ask him again. I went through the whole closet. I checked the old desk in the basement. I looked behind the water heater. I searched the plastic bins in the garage that still had my dad's labels on them from years earlier. Nothing. I was halfway through the basement when I found the old firebox from the top shelf of my dad's workbench. It had a dent in the corner and a little rust on the handle. I remembered that box. I had used it after my divorce when I was putting together a place to keep the important stuff in one spot. I had not opened it in a long time because I kept assuming I knew what was in it. Inside, under some old receipts and a warranty packet for the furnace, was the paper I had almost forgotten existed. It was a notarized occupancy agreement. My stomach actually tightened when I saw it. I had made my brother sign it the week he moved in. I remembered the whole thing in flashes. I had asked a friend from work who handled rental properties what I should do. He had told me that if I was going to let family live with me, I needed something in writing. Not because I expected a disaster, because disasters do not warn you. So I had typed up a simple agreement on my old laptop. It said he was a temporary guest. It said the arrangement was month to month. It said he had no ownership interest in the house. It said he was not a tenant under any lease. It said I could end the arrangement with written notice. It said he was not allowed to change locks, duplicate keys, or move personal documents. It was not fancy. It was not a legal masterpiece. But it was signed, it was dated, and because I had been nervous enough to want proof, I had taken it to a UPS store and had it notarized. I sat down on the basement steps and read it twice. Then I read it again. The language was plain enough that I did not need a lawyer to tell me what it meant. My brother had agreed to be a guest. That was all, not a roommate with rights, not a co-occupant with a claim. A guest. I do not think I have ever been so relieved and so angry at the same time. Relieved because I was not crazy. Angry because he had probably been planning this entire argument while I was buying his groceries. I took photos of the paper with my phone. Then I took photos of the deed from the probate folder while I was at it. The deed showed the house in my name alone. My name, not his, not ours. Mine. I was still staring at it when my brother came downstairs and asked what I was doing. He had that same lazy confidence on his face, like he expected me to fold. I told him calmly that I had found something that changed the situation. He asked what I thought I had found. I told him not to worry about it yet. He did not like that. He stood there in the basement doorway and looked down at the paper in my hand like he already understood he had lost some of the leverage he thought he had. I should have been harsher. I know that now. But I was tired of fighting people who tried to win by exhausting me. So I did what I usually do when something matters. I documented everything and started moving in a straight line. That afternoon, I called a local tenant attorney whose name a coworker had given me months earlier when she was helping her own mother with an eviction. I explained the situation without trying to dramatize it. The lawyer asked me what documents I had. I told him I had the deed, the notarized occupancy agreement, utility bills in my name, and photos of the lock on my bedroom door. He told me that was enough to start with. He also told me not to argue with my brother about the law because people who are confident and wrong tend to get louder when they feel themselves slipping. That sounded obvious, but it helped. He told me to give formal written notice and to keep the wording clean. He told me to change the locks after he was out, not before. He told me that if my brother refused to leave after notice, the court process would be a lot easier if I had kept my temper the whole time. I thanked him and spent the rest of the night drafting the notice to vacate. I hand-delivered it the next morning. I did not yell, I did not threaten, I did not lecture him about being ungrateful. I just put the paper in front of him, explained that the temporary arrangement was over, and told him he had 30 days to leave. That was when the real tantrum started. He said I was overreacting. He said I had no heart. He said I was abandoning family when he was finally getting back on his feet. He said he had been helping around the house and making it livable. He said I acted like I was the only one who had ever paid a bill. He said the house felt more like home to him than to me now, which was the most absurd thing he could have said and still somehow the one he believed in most. I did not respond to any of it. I just watched him cycle through surprise, anger, and panic while the paper sat on the table between us. He tried a new angle after that. He said he had been there long enough to establish rights. He said there were laws for people who had lived somewhere beyond a certain point. He said I could not just put him on the street because he had nowhere else to go. I told him the law was exactly why I had put it in writing years earlier. That made him change colors. He picked up the paper, scanned it, and then looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I think that was the moment he realized this was not a bluff. But he still did not surrender. He moved from angry to fake calm in under a minute. He told me he would talk to Mom. He told me I was going to look like the bad guy. He told me everybody would understand his side once they knew how I was treating him. He was half right about that. The next day, my mother called me crying. She had already heard his version. He had told her I had decided to evict him without warning. He had told her I was doing it because I was mad about a stupid lock on a bedroom door. He had told her I was trying to kick him out during the worst stretch of his life. She asked me if there was any way to work something out. I told her there was, but it had to start with the truth. I asked her to come over. She did, and I showed her the deed, the occupancy agreement, the notice, and the photos of the lock. She went quiet for a long time. I watched her eyes move over the paper like she was trying to make sense of the difference between what my brother had said and what was actually written down. She did not look happy. She looked disappointed in a way that hurt more than anger would have. She had always wanted to believe the best about him. She had also always expected me to be the stable one, which meant she assumed I could absorb whatever fallout he created. That day was the first time I think she understood that I had a limit. She asked me whether he had really changed the lock on my room. I showed her the photos again. Then I took her upstairs and showed her the door in person. She actually put a hand to her mouth when she saw it. I think because the lock made the whole situation real in a way that a complaint could not. Anyone can say they are being pushed around. It hits different when there is fresh hardware on your own bedroom door. My brother found us in the hallway. He immediately acted like he had been cornered. He told my mother I was overreacting. He told her he had done the lock because he wanted privacy. He told her I was acting like he had broken into the house when all he had done was make a reasonable adjustment. My mother, to her credit, did not take the bait. She asked him whether he had paid rent. He said not exactly. She asked him whether he had ever been added to the deed. He said no. She asked him whether he had been told the arrangement was temporary. He said yes, but that had changed. That was the first honest thing he said all afternoon. He actually admitted that he had believed staying long enough had changed the deal. Mom looked at him for a long time after that. Then she told him that believing something was not the same as being entitled to it. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not. The next week was a mess. He started making little passive-aggressive comments around the house. He started leaving his dishes in the sink for me. He took up the entire driveway with his truck and did not move it when I needed to leave for work. He kept asking if I was really serious about making him go. He also started calling relatives. Not all of them, just the ones he knew would pressure me. My aunt sent me a long text about blood being thicker than property lines. My cousin tried to tell me this was probably just his pride talking. An old family friend called my mother and suggested maybe I should give him more time because he was clearly struggling. The weird part is that some of those people were not trying to be cruel. They were trying to avoid conflict. They wanted the easiest version of the story. The easiest version was that I had overreacted. The problem with the easiest version is that it usually belongs to whoever is loudest. I stayed quiet and kept records. I added dates to every interaction. I saved screenshots. I took pictures of the driveway when his truck blocked me in. I saved the utility bills. I saved the grocery receipts from the weeks I had been covering nearly everything. I also found something I had not expected to find. One night I was looking for a wrench in the garage and noticed a stack of envelopes in a plastic bin. Most were junk. One was from a storage unit company. One was from a credit union. One was from a towing company. The weird one was from an attorney in his name, not mine. His name. I did not open it right away because I knew better than to snoop through legal mail, even if it was sitting in my own garage. I took it to him and told him he should probably look at it. He snatched it, saw the law office return address, and suddenly stopped being smug. I asked him whether he wanted to tell me what that was about. He told me it was none of my business. That was enough for me. I did not need a confession. A week later, I learned from my mother that he had gotten behind on his credit card debt after his divorce, and that the attorney was about collections and an old co-signed storage unit bill from years earlier. He had not mentioned any of that when he asked to move in. Of course, he had not. The list of things he had left out kept getting longer. He had also not mentioned that he had bounced between 2 friends and an ex-girlfriend before coming to my house because none of them wanted him to stay indefinitely either. Every version of his story left that part out. It made me angry enough to shake, but not angry enough to make a mistake. I kept following the process. The lawyer filed the eviction when the notice period expired and my brother still had not moved. He tried to claim he was a tenant. The occupancy agreement mattered. He tried to claim he had made improvements. That did not matter. He tried to claim he had been paying toward the house. The bills in my name and the bank records said otherwise. He tried to claim the lock was about safety because he had valuables. The photos of my own room and the paperwork drawer said otherwise. For a couple of weeks, he behaved like the whole thing could still be stalled if he delayed long enough. Then he got served. That was the first time I saw him look genuinely scared. Not fake offended. Not performatively upset. Actually scared. He stopped playing tough guy for about 2 hours. He came to me and tried to reset the conversation by acting wounded. He said I was blowing up the family. He said he was going to end up on a friend's couch because of my stubbornness. He said I had never really understood what he was going through. He was right about that last part in a way. I had understood some of it. I just had not understood how much of his hardship he had turned into permission. I told him the paperwork had already started. I told him he had 30 days from the notice and that the court filing made it official. I told him I was done arguing about what he wished the situation was. That was when he snapped. He slammed his hand on the counter and told me he had lived there long enough that I could not throw him out now. He said it like a challenge. He said it like he thought volume could turn into law. I did not raise my voice. I just looked at him and told him I had found the one paper that changed everything. Then I held up the notarized occupancy agreement. The color drained out of his face so fast I almost felt bad for him. Almost. He looked down at the paper, then at me, then at the lock on my bedroom door sitting in a little tray on the counter after I had removed it earlier for evidence. That is when he understood he had made the biggest mistake of the whole mess. He had thought his confidence was a shield. He had not counted on me having receipts. The court hearing was not dramatic in the way people imagine. There was no yelling. There was no dramatic surprise witness. It was just a small room, a tired judge, and a stack of documents that said what they said regardless of how either of us felt. My brother tried to explain that family arrangements were complicated. The judge asked for the lease. There was none. The judge asked for proof of ownership. I had the deed and tax records. The judge asked for the signed occupancy agreement. I handed it over. The judge asked whether he had been given written notice. I produced that too. The judge asked whether he had paid rent. He had not. The judge asked whether he had a claim to the house. He mumbled something about fairness. Fairness does not carry much weight when the paper is against you. The order came through fast enough that I did not even feel relief at first. I just felt tired. My brother looked stunned, then angry, then embarrassed. He kept looking at me like I had personally betrayed him. I think he honestly believed the judge would side with his suffering over my paperwork. That was the fantasy he had been living in. The court broke it in under 20 minutes. He had to be out by a set date. The sheriff would assist if he refused. That was the only part that made him finally stop arguing. The next 3 weeks were some of the longest of my life. He did not pack right away. He dragged everything out and acted like moving slowly might change the result. He called relatives again, but the tone shifted. People had heard there was an actual court order now. Suddenly, everyone was a lot less certain that I was the villain. My mother came by twice to help him box up clothes. She still loved him. I think she was embarrassed for all of us. She also finally admitted that she had seen the same pattern in him for years and kept hoping someone else would manage it. That hurt to hear because it was true. His ex-wife called me one afternoon from a blocked number after she somehow heard what was going on. She told me she was not surprised. She told me he had done this same thing in their marriage by taking over decisions until the other person got exhausted and gave up. She told me he was very good at turning other people into the bad guy. I did not know what to say to that, so I mostly listened. That call changed the way I saw the last 2 years. I had thought I was watching him slowly break under pressure. Now I understood I had been watching him test the edges of what he could get away with. That is the part that still bothers me. Not that he was struggling. He absolutely was. It is that struggle and manipulation can wear the same face if you want them to badly enough. The move-out day came on a wet Saturday in April. The sky was the color of wet concrete. He rented a U-Haul too small for everything he had crammed into my house. There were 2 friends helping him, both of whom looked like they had already heard the whole story and were trying to avoid getting involved. He barely spoke to me. I barely spoke to him. The sheriff did not have to come because he left before the deadline, which was the one thing I was glad about. I did not want drama. I wanted him gone. Still, even though he left, he could not resist one last attempt to make himself the injured party. As he carried the last of his boxes to the truck, he made a point of looking around the house like he was saying goodbye to something he had built. It was ridiculous. He had lived there. He had not built it. He had never paid the mortgage, never signed the deed, never fixed the roof leak, never handled the property taxes, never dealt with the furnace inspection, never called the insurance company when the tree branch knocked a gutter loose, and never once understood what it meant to be responsible for a whole place, instead of just existing in it. When he drove away, the house felt too quiet, not peaceful right away, just hollow. I walked from room to room for almost an hour. The bedroom door looked wrong without the lock. The hallway closet looked too empty because half his junk was gone. The kitchen looked bigger. The garage looked like a storm had moved through it. I sat on the couch and felt my adrenaline drain out so hard I got nauseous. I think that is when I finally let myself feel everything I had been postponing. The anger, the embarrassment, the grief of losing the brother I thought I had, the humiliation of realizing I had let it go too far because I wanted to be kind. And underneath all that, the weird shame that comes from finding out your patience had been mistaken for weakness. I do not think there is a noble version of that feeling. It just sucks. For the next month, I changed all the locks, installed a camera by the front door, and spent a stupid amount of time reorganizing the house. I threw out broken tools. I found 3 grocery store receipts stuffed in a flower pot. I found a sock in the furnace room that made no sense. I donated a lot of his old clothes because I did not want his leftovers taking up oxygen in my spare room. I also got a local locksmith to open a second deadbolt the way it should have been done in the first place. Then I took the notarized agreement, the court order, and the deed copies, and put them in a folder marked house in big block letters. I was not going to need them for this issue again, but I wanted them where I could find them. A month after he left, my mother came over with takeout and apologized. It was awkward. Neither of us had been very good at the whole thing. She said she had wanted to believe he would snap out of it if somebody just gave him enough grace. She said she had not realized grace can turn into a weapon when the wrong person gets used to it. That was probably the smartest thing anyone said to me during the entire mess. She started coming over more after that, but the vibe changed. She stopped assuming I would just absorb everything. She also stopped defending my brother every time his name came up. I did not ask her to cut him off. I just needed her to stop treating my home like a shared emergency shelter for whatever chaos he created. It took him a while to land on his feet. I know because the family grapevine is basically a government database when people are bored. He bounced between a friend's couch and a cheap apartment in a rough part of town. He got a warehouse job. He missed one of his first payments and got hit with fees. He called my mother asking whether I would ever reconsider. I did not out of spite. because every time I thought about letting him back in, I remembered that lock on my door and the way he had looked me in the eye while pretending I was the problem. I could forgive a lot. I could not unsee that. About 6 months later, he sent me a text apologizing for the way things had gone. It was one of those carefully worded apologies that tries to keep some dignity while still sounding sincere. I answered that I hoped he was doing better and that I wanted him to stay in his own place. That was it. No lecture, no pile-on, no happy reunion, just a boundary. That was new for me. Before all this, I would have been tempted to soften it. I would have added some line about family being family. Now I understood that family is exactly where bad boundaries hurt the most. The house has been calm since then. I still sleep better knowing the doors lock the way I expect them to. I still check my paperwork more often than most people would consider normal. I still keep every major document in one place and back them up digitally. I still do not let anyone stay without a written agreement, no matter how bad things look in the moment. That sounds cold when I write it out, but it really is not. It is just clear. There is a difference. People act like protecting yourself means you do not care. That is not true. It means you have learned what happens when caring is left open-ended. I did care. I still care in a way. My brother is not some monster from a movie. He is a guy who got bitter, desperate, and entitled all at the same time. He told himself a story where surviving long enough in someone else's home made it his home too. That story fell apart the second I found the paper he had forgotten existed. And honestly, that was the real win for me. Not kicking him out, not making him look foolish, just letting the truth sit there in black and white until he could not talk around it anymore. The house is mine again. My bedroom door has no weird lock on it. My paperwork stays where I put it. The bills are in my name and get paid on time. The garage looks like a garage instead of a storage unit for someone else's life. And every once in a while, when I walk past the hallway closet and see the old file folder with the deed and the notarized agreement inside it, I think about how close I came to letting guilt outrun common sense. I do not tell that part to make myself sound smart. I tell it because I was not smart at first. I was just patient. Then I got lucky enough to remember where I had put the one piece of paper that mattered. After everything settled, my mother joked that I should frame it. I did not. I put it in the folder instead. That feels more appropriate. It is not a trophy. It is proof. And every time I think about the day my brother snapped and told me I could not throw him out, I remember that he was right about one thing. I could not do it casually. I had to do it the proper way. And once I did, the truth handled the rest.